Hello everybody! Today we're dissecting S.T.A.L.K.E.R Shadow of Chernobyl. Honestly, I didn't want to make this video. What more could be said about this game after 17 years? Every dev document has been analyzed, every secret of the zone and every gameplay mechanic has been rehashed countless times. Any review of Shadow of Chernobyl these days feels like repeating what's already been said. On November 20th, The Heart of Chernobyl was released, and I was eager to work on it right after finishing the playthrough. However, the sequel is packed with so many references to the original that understanding it without diving into a detailed analysis of Shadow of Chernobyl and its two expansions is challenging. Moreover, the release version of The Heart of Chernobyl is riddled with various, often serious bugs that make it impossible to complete. Some mechanics, as the developers have promised, will only be added in future patches. So I decided to wait. Imagine saying the game lacks a life simulation system only for it to be added later. The review would be outdated, and I don't want that to happen. Plus, here on this channel there is no rush. But that's not the main point. After finishing the second S.T.A.L.K.E.R, I decided to immerse myself in the original. To my great surprise, I rediscovered it. So pull up a seat by my campfire in our cozy little zone. Get ready to dive into the original S.T.A.L.K.E.R trilogy for the next few months. I've got plenty to share. My short analysis is proof enough. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button and write a comment. On your screen is S.T.A.L.K.E.R Shadow of Chernobyl. Let's go. Before we continue, I want to tell you about StarCraft-X. The game is getting bigger and more exciting every day. Explore the huge world of the Zone of Alienation alone or with friends. Complete quests, search for artifacts, hunt mutants, and follow the storyline. You can play StarCraft-X absolutely free, and if you want to support my channel, the best way to do that is to register using my referral link and enter my welcome bonus code in the game. You'll get a bunch of cool bonuses that will make starting out easier. The game is constantly evolving, and the developers are planning to release an update with new locations, including Pripyat. Level up your character now, so you can be the first to explore Pripyat. See you in StarCraft-X. Thank you.
Okay, let's go.
Many call S.T.A.L.K.E.R a game with unique atmosphere. But what exactly is the atmosphere in S.T.A.L.K.E.R? No one seems to have a definitive answer. It's a deeply subjective and abstract concept, always tinged with a sense of mystery. I have my own understanding of the atmosphere, and I'll definitely share it with you in this video. Nevertheless, the atmosphere greets us right in the main menu. A crumbling wall revealing the Chernobyl NPP, a rifle resting by a campfire, a haunting it all is a sinister track by Moose. The main theme of S.T.A.L.K.E.R is a masterpiece. Like the main menu, it sets the tone for the experience ahead. Yeah, you won't fully understand the track or its meaning until you've completed the game. It takes on a whole new perspective after everything you've seen. Now let's pick a difficulty level. I skipped backward. They say it's insanely hard and settled for master. The game loads and we're greeted with a CGI cutscene. S.T.A.L.K.E.R Shadow of Chernobyl belongs to an older era of gaming. Seeing a CGI cutscene at the start of a game is a rarity now, with intros often rendered directly in the game engine. The CGI cutscenes in S.T.A.L.K.E.R are among the best of gaming. They have a distinctive style thanks to their direction, post-processing and sound design, albeit not without their flaws. The story begins with a truck driving down a road filled with corpses. A lightning strike hits the vehicle, sending it off the road, where it tumbles and crashes. Sometime later, a man arrives at the crash site, searches the bodies and discovers a survivor among the dead. He takes the survivor to a local trader named Sidorovich, explaining that he found him near the death truck.
У него метка.
Правила знаешь? Выбрось его.
Так ведь он живой.
Ты врешь. Не может быть.
Пусть меня зона сожрет, если вру.
The survivor turned out to be the protagonist of the game, bearing a tattoo reading S.T.A.L.K.E.R on his arm and a PDA containing only one entry: Kill STRELOK.
За эту фигню я дам тебе...
When we regain consciousness, Sidorevich gives us the nickname Marked One and informs us that we'll need to repay him for saving our life. He quickly introduces us to the situation and gives us our first mission. There is an informant who was supposed to deliver vital information on a flash drive. Unfortunately, he never made it, having been captured by bandits nearby. Sidorevich cares more about the flash drive than the informant himself, who he largely dismisses. After a brief orientation, Sidorevich opens the door and we step out of his bunker into the world. We know nothing about the protagonist's past, how he ended up in the death track, who STRELOK is and why he must be killed. These are questions the Marked One will have to unravel for himself. Now it's time to figure out where we are. We're not in the zone yet. There is only one way in, and it goes right through here. The cordon has several key locations. First, the military checkpoint to the south, guarded by heavily armed soldiers who shoot first and ask for papers later. A little further on is the Rookie Village, home to stalkers who are new to the zone, many of whom still don't fully understand the dangers they've stepped into. The village is overseen by Wolf, a stalker with plenty of experience. North of the village is the abandoned car park, a place where bandits frequently gather. The road to the zone leads through a railway bridge, a farm and a northern checkpoint. Wildlife in the area includes boars, blind dogs and the occasional mutant. The Zone of Alienation is a terrifying place, but the cordon is relatively peaceful. Here, the game doesn't throw major challenges at us, instead giving us a chance to get our bearings. In the Rookie Village, you can enter every house, check out basements and cellars, and even find food and medical supplies. Thorough exploration might even reward you with quality armor, making survival in the early stages much easier. The game encourages exploration of its world from the very beginning, and then things get more interesting. In the village, stalkers sit around campfires, playing guitars and telling jokes. At the entrance, a man stands with a pistol, as if that'll help much if trouble comes. Still, he's a guard, and the village feels relatively safe. However, once you leave the village and head toward your first quest, you'll immediately encounter challenges. The first is a wounded stalker named Tolik. A few meters away lies a corpse being eaten by a dog. In the distance, you'll see strange phenomena known as anomalies, as the stalkers call them. The game begins at dawn, but this sunrise is far from calming. It's marked by cold tones, with dust occasionally clouding your vision. From the first minutes, the narrative designer establishes a clear tone throughout the environment, shaping your perception of the game's world and hinting at what lies ahead. Just beyond that ruined bridge. The fact that the bridge is broken seems to suggest that things will only get more dangerous from here. But even in the village you can't fully relax. After all, the military checkpoint is right next door. From loudspeakers you hear announcements stating that the zone is a guarded area and anyone entering illegally will be shot on sight. If something were to happen, the stalkers in the village wouldn't stand a chance. A fragile truce is maintained thanks to Sidorevich, who has private agreements with the military. For now, the village is left alone, as long as no one pushes their luck. In the village, we meet Wolf, who gives us a pistol and sends us to meet Petrucha. Together with his squad, we are tasked with rescuing Nimble from the bandits. At this point, you'll notice something fascinating. All battles between NPCs are fair. No one heals to anyone. Our allies aren't immortal and don't have extra health points. Bandits can kill quest-related characters and their team, leaving you to save Nimble on your own. This holds true for every in-game situation. Wherever you go and whoever you help, the game doesn't go easy on you. It doesn't care if you fail, and it won't break if a quest character dies. The only immortal NPCs are the traders, without whom progressing the story would be impossible. However, since they are located in safe zones, they are rarely, if ever, in danger. I respect this approach. Watching fair fights between NPCs can often be thrilling. You can assess both sides of a conflict, their armor and equipment, and try to guess who will win, but you're never certain until the fight ends. Adding to the excitement is the enemy AI, which we'll discuss in a separate section. While we were rescuing Nimble and his flash drive, Sidorevich wasn't idle. He managed to learn a few things about STRELOK. Turns out, STRELOK was a stalker who supposedly found a way to the center of the zone. Sidorevich agrees to help us in the search for him, but not for free. Together with other traders, Sidorevich has long been looking for a way to open the road to the zone center. However, access is blocked by the brain SCORCHER, about which little is known. If STRELOK managed to get to the center, we need to find out how he did it. This way everyone wins. We take down STRELOK and Sidorevich gets his profit. Recently, the military discovered secret documents in the Agroprom Research Institute that are clearly related to the center. These need to be stolen. The Market One isn't bothered by the challenge, so he agrees and sets out on his first major expedition, straight into the zone. To get to Agroprom, he must pass through the garbage area. But what is the zone and why is it hidden from the public eye? It's a part of the Chernobyl zone of alienation, an area of hate and anomalous activity surrounded by a guarded perimeter. Civilian access is strictly forbidden, but the fortune seekers this is no obstacle. These adventurers call themselves stalkers and they find various ways to sneak in and settle. The events of S.T.A.L.K.E.R Shadow of Chernobyl take place in 2012, a time when the zone is relatively calm, although it hasn't always been that way. On April 26, 1986, violations during routine work at the fourth reactor of the Chernobyl NPP led to an explosion. A massive amount of radioactive material was released into the atmosphere, contaminating the surrounding area. A 30-kilometer zone of alienation was created, and its inhabitants were evacuated. The area was fenced off from the rest of the world with a guarded perimeter. On April 12, 2008, the zone suddenly lit up with an unbearably bright light. For a few moments, silence reigned. Clouds could be seen evaporating in the sky. Then came a deafening roar and the ground shook. A powerful surge of energy from the heart of the zone, the Chernobyl NPP, poured across the land, altering the laws of physics. Later, this phenomena will come to be known as emissions. This energy, which repeatedly bursts forth, changes the locations of anomalies and creates artifacts, anomalous formations with various properties that attract scientists, traders and stalkers eager to hunt them down in hopes of striking it rich. By 2009, estimates suggested there were between 100 and 300 stalkers in the zone. Many began forming groups, laying the groundwork for large stalker clans. Despite military control, by 2010 stalking became more widespread, yet the zone center remained an unattainable goal. Something or someone was blocking access. Among stalkers, legends circulated about the Wish Granter, a crystal of extraterrestrial origin that supposedly caused the zone's formation. There were also tales of a treasure trove of artifacts whose sale could make someone wealthy for generations. For these reasons, the zone center became a forbidden fruit, unreachable but incredibly tempting. Whoever reached it first would claim it all. This is why the traders are so desperate to open the road to the center. S.T.A.L.K.E.R wouldn't be S.T.A.L.K.E.R without bugs, or as fans like to call them, anomalies. Right from the start, you'll encounter a slew of small problems. For instance, Sidorovich's animation during the opening dialogue ends before his lines are finished. When you step outside, you'll notice shadow issues at the edges of the screen and in the distance, as well as erratic camera movement. Incidentally, the camera issue used by occur only on pirate copies. However, once the game was released on Steam, this error found its way there too. These problems can be fixed with 3 console commands: R2 sun near border 1, come in R0 and R2 sun near 15. These commands fix the camera and shadow issues, making the gameplay experience much smoother. As for the other bugs, you'll either have to live with them or install mods that fix these issues. However, mods often change the gameplay itself in some way, which means you lose the original experience. Upon the release of the second S.T.A.L.K.E.R, it became trendy to claim that older games didn't have soft locks and that all quests worked flawlessly. This isn't true, and some errors persist to this day. Certain side quests can break. For example, on the army warehouses level, there is a quest where you can either destroy Freedom's base or a duty squad at the hamlet. If you choose to deal with duty, you must complete the task without leaving the location or reloading a save during the quest. If you die during the quest and reload a save to complete it on the second try, the quest may not register as completed. The Freedom squad will remain stuck indefinitely. Future faction quests will be unavailable. You'll miss out on some content. content. The main storyline playable from start to finish, but outside the main quests, various problems can crop up. If you take a side quest to find unique weapons, you might encounter a situation where the marker for it on the map keeps moving. This means the weapon is with an NPC who is carrying it somewhere. Then suddenly the marker freezes out of reach. You can't get to it. It's past the transition to another location. Even then, you can see that the NPC is no longer there. The marker simply failed to update and the NPC has long since moved on. In my case, the marker froze near the transition to Agroprom. I eventually found the NPC in Agroprom's underground, but that's only because I knew he was hidden there. A first-time player of Shadow of Chernobyl would likely have no clue about this. Another example is when you loot information about a stash from a corpse. The marker for it is kindly highlighted on the map, but when you arrive the stash is empty because the game simply failed to spawn loot inside. Shadow of Chernobyl has many such minor issues. They don't make the gameplay unbearable or tedious, but they are noticeable, and quest-related bugs can spoil the experience. Interestingly, some of these problems weren't present at launch. They were introduced in patches. In the Dark Valley, for instance, there are many locked cabinets. However, you can take all the loot through the doors. At launch, you had to shoot the locks first to open the cabinets before grabbing the goodies. Grass shadows, which can be enabled in the graphics settings, don't work anymore, but it worked fine at launch. Another bug introduced in the patches affects NPC reactions. Let's say you decide to stealthily take down enemies. You save your game, start walking, but then make a mistake and get spotted. You reload the save only to find that everyone already knows about you and has scattered to cover. The official patches fix a lot of bugs, but also introduce new ones. The most annoying bug is related to the global map. The game can't properly center on your position or remember it. Every time you open the map, it moves to some random place you've never been to before. This happens every single time. It's a minor but persistent frustration. Such anomalies in our beloved zone. As I mentioned earlier, the cardon is the starting location, where players familiarize themselves with gameplay mechanics, resource management and more. Every dead stalker can be looted and mutants sometimes drop body parts. All of this can be sold for cash, which you can use to buy medkits, food or new armor. However, you can't grab everything due to the weight limit. Even ammunition has weight. Some types of ammo are quite heavy, so before every expedition you need to think about what to bring. This process truly immerses you in the game. Sidrovich and Wolf can give you side quests, such as clearing areas of mutants, finding artifacts or mutant body parts, or eliminating unwanted stalkers. These are simple quests, often accompanied by brief descriptions, but they sometimes include interesting bits of lore. The problem is that some quests are assigned automatically when you enter a location. You can't postpone them. You're given just one in-game day to complete them. You also need to return to the quest giver to report your success. Most side quests are cyclical. You can complete them all permanently. They can be a good source of income, and sometimes the reward includes armor or a rare artifact. The final interesting mechanic you'll encounter in the first few hours of the game is a hallmark of S.T.A.L.K.E.R, the A-Life simulation system. It's essential to understand what situations the system creates on screen and how it works. The idea behind A-Life is derived from John Conway's Game of Life. Simple rules can generate complex behavior. If you play S.T.A.L.K.E.R strictly following the main story without distractions, you might not fully appreciate this system. But if you take your time to explore the cardon, complete Sidrovich side quests, and check every corner, you'll start noticing interesting situations. For instance, you might see a group of bandits walking down the road, hiding somewhere. Or you might leave the village only to return and find more stalkers gathered around the campfire, someone sleeping in the house, and strangers you don't recognize. While hunting mutants for a side quest, you might encounter a stalker struggling to fend them off. These situations always make you wonder, is this just NPC spawning near you, or is it something more? A whole system tracking every living being in the game and managing them. In reality, it truly is a separate system that simulates life in the zone, where every stalker is hidden somewhere with a specific goal. For this system to fully unfold, it needs time. So rushing through the main story is not advisable, otherwise you'll miss the most fascinating parts. Sometimes you might arrive at a location situation only to see not the event itself, but its aftermath. At the ruined bridge there are soldiers who are willing to turn a blind eye to your illegal presence and let you throw for 500 rubles. If you don't have the money you can find a way around, but that's not the point. If you start shooting at them, they'll fire back, and any chance of future communication with them will be lost. That's clear and straightforward. However, in my case, some other stalkers decided to cross the bridge, triggering a firefight where several soldiers were killed. I had no part in this, but when I arrived to bribe Major Kuznetsov, I found him dead, surrounded by corpses, and the surviving soldiers opened fire on me. Apparently, they were so angry that they decided to shoot anyone on sight. What's interesting is that this situation didn't have to happen. In another playthrough, the soldiers might fend off the attack, or no one might approach the bridge at all. The stalkers trying to cross the bridge weren't doing so randomly. The bandits were heading toward to abandoned car park to reclaim it, while the stalkers wanted to rest at the rookie village or go straight there. They had specific goals, and on their way, they ran into troubles. Why they choose the bridge road is unclear, but it is what it is. Other stalkers were smarter and decided to take the tunnel with anomalies to reach the village. Unfortunately, they were unsuccessful too and died in the anomalies. In this sense, the gameplay is fair. All events happen according to understandable rules. A-Live truly enhanced the gameplay, and that's replayability. It makes the game world feel more alive, and not many games have a mechanic as ambitious as this one. The only other example I can think of is Space Rangers. The game was almost entirely built around NPCs who pursued their own goals, constantly fought each other and carried out their tasks, while you could only see a fraction of what was happening at any given moment. But Space Rangers is a strategy game, not a shooter. You're heading toward the garbage and see someone fighting off dogs. The night falls, and in the distance you notice the light of a flashlight. Someone is coming your way. You look for cover, waiting for the right moment to ambush them, or perhaps you wait until they leave. And maybe they are not even an enemy, but you're already hiding. The knowledge that this isn't just a scripted spawn for theatrics, but a whole system ensures maximum immersion. The game behaves honestly, and during a replay, this situation might not happen at all. The game only spawns scripted enemies a couple of times during story quests or directed scenes. Of course, there are places in the game where enemies are always present, but sometimes someone else might kill them instead of you. This life simulation system encompasses almost half of all surface locations in the game. Still, while the system's rules are understandable, they're not always obvious. We'll discuss about this later, but for now, our hero is heading to the garbage. The road to Agroprom leads right through it, where mountains of radioactive waste were dumped after the 1986 disaster. Broken cranes, abandoned machinery. You can find old buildings, or what's left of them. Mutants are common here. Mostly rookies hang around, and of course bandits. You can find some minor artifacts, but it's best not to linger. Further on there are many radioactive hotspots. You can't go there without protection. Before heading to the garbage, it's recommended to buy anti-radiation meds or a couple of bottles of vodka from Sidorovich, so you don't end up glowing like a Christmas tree from radiation. The garbage is mostly controlled by bandits, though stalkers hold specific areas like a scrapyard and depot for their own activities. To the north is a checkpoint guarded by duty, protecting the entrance to the 100 Reds bar. There aren't many story-related quests in the garbage. You'll meet Seri, who's pinned down by bandits. After you help him, he'll tell you about a stalker named Mole, who knows something about STRELOK and is correctly in Agroprom. That's exactly where we headed. While ordinary stalkers come to the zone to earn money from artifacts, the bandits have a more complicated backstory. Most bandits came from the criminal world from various reasons. Some are hiding from the law, trading weapons or earning from artifacts. But searching for them personally isn't gangster work. That's why bandits often resort to robbing others. They fear going deeper into the zone, but are more than happy to wait for fat loaded stalkers returning from there. While army patrols might show leniency towards stalkers, they have no such mercy for bandits. Interrogating a bandit bandit often starts with beating them half to death. Sometimes, for the right price, a patrol might even cover a stalker's retreat, ensuring they avoid unpleasant encounters. These details sound interesting, but they're not visually represented in the game. The lore and legends of the zone are fascinating, but in practice the game boils down to ordinary shootouts. Meaningful interactions with bandits only appeared in Clear Sky and Call of Pripyat. In Shadow of Chernobyl you can't even talk to them. At most you can overhear their campfire conversations to understand what's on their minds. Bandits and mutants aren't the only dangers awaiting us. S.T.A.L.K.E.R is a shooter with RPG elements. It doesn't feature an extensive character's progression system. Your growth is limited to acquiring better armor with different attributes, new weapons and artifacts that boost some parameters while lowering others. Still, the game has a hidden progression system. From the encyclopedia, we can learn about anomalies, but we don't fully understand them until we encounter one ourselves. We must face an anomaly to understand what it is, how it works, and how to avoid it. For example, let's say we come across a springboard anomaly. At first, we don't know what it is, so we take out a bolt, throw it into the anomaly, and observe it react with an energy burst. We also notice that it reacts only when the bolt enters it, meaning we can approach it carefully. In tunnels with such anomalies, bolts can help us find safe paths. Another anomaly might burn the bolt. Visually it might resemble the springboard, but it isn't. It's a carousel. If you step into it, it pulls you in and deals damage. You might also learn this by seeing someone else get caught in it. We immerse ourselves in this world, gathering knowledge alongside the protagonist. We acquire skills we later use to our advantage, finding safe paths, driving mutants into anomalies, or searching them for artifacts. At first, everything seems strange and unclear, but it becomes understandable over time. With each interaction with anomalies, we gain experience. By the end, anomalies no longer pose a significant threat, not because they have changed, but because we have. To survive in this world, you must engage with its dangers. There is no other way. The same applies to mutants. Not all of them behave the same way. If a pack of dogs attacks us, we can shoot most of them, and the last one might flee. Dogs have a moral system. They feel fear when sensing danger. This doesn't apply to stronger mutants. Understanding their behavior helps us figure out how to deal with them. If you want to search for artifacts in anomalies, you'll face one set of dangers. If you prefer hunting mutants, killing other stalkers and selling their loot, you'll face another. This approach makes the gameplay multifaceted. However, artifacts sometimes appear right on the road. This is a problem that undermines the system I just described, but not critically. Or rather, it is critically, but not always. Agroprom. Stalkers call this territory dead. In some places, the radiation is too intense. If you venture deep enough, you'll reach radioactive plains or a lake filled with the remains of machinery and other debris. One giant pile of rusty junk, partially covered in water. You can also find the institute and the factory, but it's dangerous to linger. Don't go to Agroprom without a gas mask. You'll get a radiation dose otherwise. If the garbage was troublesome because of bandits, things get even more serious at Agroprom. Mole Squad is pinned down by military special forces, and you have to save them. In return, Mole tells you about STRELOK's stash somewhere in the underground below. However, he can't give an exact location, as he doesn't know it himself. In the underground, we encounter the Bloodsucker for the first time. This mutant is found closer to the center of the zone and is especially dangerous at night due to its invisibility. Veteran stalkers describe it as a tall, hunched humanoid with numerous tentacles instead of a mouth. According to them, it used these tentacles to feel, latching onto a living victim's neck to paralyze it and drain its blood. Afterward, only a dried, mummy-like shell remains. Apparently, Bloodsuckers are responsible for many deaths in the zone. Their cunning and danger might explain why so little is known about them. Few witnesses survive encounters with them. After surviving a fight with this creature, we reach STRELOK's stash and find the flash drive. It was used by STRELOK's group to communicate. The flash drive mentions Fang, Ghost, and a mutual friend who greatly assists the group. According to Ghost's message, Fang died, and STRELOK headed to the center of the zone alone. At the exit from the underground, we encounter encounter another marvel of the zone, the controller. This telepathic mutant can control stalkers and other mutants. It resembles a human, though upon closer inspection, it's unclear what it truly is. Its most striking features are its massive head, thick neck, and bulging eyes. The controller can attack us from a distance and affect our consciousness. Prolonged exposure to it causes double vision and a rapid decline in health. S.T.A.L.K.E.R. Shadow of Chernobyl had almost no Hollywood-style theatrics. The game features only 2 story cutscenes from a first-person perspective and a couple of camera flyovers. The rest of the story is told purely through gameplay. We're talking about true old-school design. Even encounters with the Bloodsucker and the controller happen outside of cutscenes. It's not a perfect comparison, but to illustrate the difference, in Doom 3, before facing a major enemy, the game would take control away from you to show a short cutscene, adding cinematic flair. This approach is now common in games, but it's absent in S.T.A.L.K.E.R. Before encountering the Bloodsucker, we hear only a scripted roar. Moments later, it charges at us. At that point, we're free to do whatever we want, shoot at it, hide or retreat. However, there is little time to think. This approach suits S.T.A.L.K.E.R. perfectly. All the dangers in the game confront us directly, and the game doesn't try to showcase them cinematically by taking away control. Instead, it grants us full freedom of action. It's old-fashioned, but in a good way. Of course, encountering a Bloodsucker or a controller no longer feels as impactful now. Players have honed their skills, and such enemies are often shot down before they can even reach us. Modern developers resort to other methods to scare players. Still, from a gameplay perspective, this scene is excellent. Back when the game launched, encountering a Bloodsucker in Agroprom's underground terrified almost everyone. After escaping the Agroprom, the Market One steals military documents from their base. Sidorovich advises taking them straight to the barkeep at the 100 Reds bar, located in the basement of an old hangar in the Rostok factory complex. Before the 1986 disaster, this was an industrial area. Now stalkers from all over the zone gather at the bar, which is run by the barkeep, who also acts as a trader. The area also features the arena, where you can earn some extra cash. Nearby is Duty's base. The entire territory is under Duty's control, so you'd behave. Any trouble, and their patrols will quickly put you in your place. During a conversation with the barkeep, we learn that the documents mention Laboratory X-18, which seems to match the underground facilities beneath the Dark Valley. This is where the missing portion of the documents is located. The entrance to the lab is locked, requiring 2 electronic keys. The barkeep provides one, but the other must be taken from Borov in the Dark Valley. Naturally, Borov won't hand it over willingly, so we'll have to take it by force. As you may have noticed, the game, released in 2007, hasn't aged too badly graphically. It lacks many modern technologies like parallax occlusion mapping, wet surfaces, volumetric lighting, sunbeams, advanced lighting models and more. However, S.T.A.L.K.E.R. has aged remarkably well. Why? The answer lies on the surface. Actually, it's not about the technology, although that plays a part, but about photorealism. The game's events take place in the Chernobyl zone of alienation, a real-world location. During development, the creators visited the zone, meticulously documenting and photographing everything to later replicate these materials in the game. As a result, the game uses textures based on real-world photographs rather than artist-created textures. The in-game zone of alienation closely resembles the real one thanks to its photorealism. Tiles, concrete, walls, bricks, even the asphalt all look just like they do in real-life Pripyat and its surroundings. Today, the texture quality leaves much to be desired. After all, cameras back then weren't as advanced as they are now, and computers couldn't handle 4K textures. Nevertheless, the photorealistic depiction of the zone has aged wonderfully. It hasn't deteriorated. On the contrary, it helps the game still look quite good. The second reason for the game's surprising longevity is its dynamic day-night cycle, untied to specific story moments combined with various weather effects and cycles. You can progress through the story, handle your own business, or simply sit by a campfire listening to stalker tales. No matter what you do, time in the game moves forward, and so does the weather. This wasn't a new mechanic even back then. For instance, Morrowind also had a day-night cycle. You can play Fallout 3 and notice the passage of time, but weather rarely changes, and the skybox often stays the same. Sunrises, sunsets, nights, they are all present, but usually under the same static sky texture. S.T.A.L.K.E.R offers far more variety. The game features numerous skyboxes and weather effects, clear skies, clouds, fog, rain, storms, all of which can occur within a single in-game day. The same scene can look completely different thanks to the advanced weather system. Most importantly, these transitions happen smoothly, avoiding the scripted feel. Moreover, the weather isn't tied to quests. In one playthrough, you might clear out soldiers in Agraprom during the day. In another, it could happen at night. The same quest can visually feel entirely different. This system doesn't always work perfectly. The sun rises and sets in the same place, and some locations lack a night cycle entirely. I've often wondered why. These issues were fixed by mods as far back as 2007. Personally, I believe it's not a bug, but part of the game's aesthetic. The visual appeal of certain locations is fully realized only when the sun is positioned exactly where the developers intended. Certain locations where a nighttime is intentionally removed simply don't look as good at night as they do during the day. For these levels, unique weather cycles were created. Take the YANTAR location, for example. It's always shrouded in fog, giving it a gloomy atmosphere. At night or on a clear day, this mood would be completely lost. This is especially an issue when transitioning from one location to another and suddenly finding yourself under a nighttime sky. It can briefly break immersion. But it's far from catastrophic. The third reason is dynamic lighting. The flashlight in the game casts shadows, immediately adding depth to enclosed spaces filled with various objects. Shadows are always cast from a light source, whether it's the sun, a lamp, or a campfire. Granted, because the sun always occupies the same region of the sky, the full potential of shadow effects from it isn't always apparent in the game. However, the system truly works. You can install any weather mod that changes the sun's path and see this for yourself. When a thunderstorm strikes at night, with frequent lighting flashes, every object casts shadows during those brief bursts of light. The game also avoids the garish color filters, excessive bloom, and other visual clutter that plagued many titles of that era, and still do today. It's challenging to notice loads in the game. This is thanks to the distance cooling fog adjustable in the weather configuration. The loads remain behind the fog, so we simply don't see them. Nothing except nearby grass and shadows is loaded in full detail. S.T.A.L.K.E.R delivers a photorealistic, clean and consistent visual presentation. There are no overblown highlights in the sky or through windows, no strange black outlines in interiors or baked shadows that persist even when their light source is destroyed. It's also important to note that S.T.A.L.K.E.R was built on its own proprietary graphics engine. Today most games look similar, differing only in art design because they rely on standardized technologies and frequently use pre-made solutions. Games from the earlier era each had a distinct look because developers poured effort into their proprietary engines. This is one reason why S.T.A.L.K.E.R still feels unique. In the end, we get a game with its own aesthetic and signature style, the Chernobyl zone of alienation, photorealism, thoughtful design, and its own technology. That's the answer to why S.T.A.L.K.E.R has aged so well.
И никого на горизонте. Вот и ладушки. Вот и хорошо. А все-таки накоплю на свой домик, чтоб у речки и лес рядом. И ни радиации тебе, ни тварей, ни сволочей разных.
This is the Dark Valley, always gloomy, always misty, and always rainy place. It also has one of the highest concentrations of anomalies. You can easily find valuable artifacts here, or just as easily lose your life. You'll undoubtedly encounter veterans here. They make their living by retrieving artifacts from the most dangerous areas. However, they always avoid the laboratory. Something terrifying and inexplicable is happening there. Yet we'll have to go in, but first we need to kill Borov and take his key. The game doesn't explicitly explain what happened in the lab. Still, judging by the surroundings, it's clear that experiments on humans and animals were conducted there. The game sadly suggests that some mutants are the results of these experiments. In the lab you'll find large capsules holding horrifying creatures. A design document sheds more light on this lab, but such information isn't present in the game itself. Many of the lab secrets were declassified in the sequel, so we'll touch on that topic later. In the original game, the story is told through environmental details, but some things remain deliberately ambiguous. Even so, the evidence of various experiments is undeniable, with their victims subjected to mission exposure. In the early 20th century, the concept of psychotropic weapons capable of influencing the enemy's mind and psyche was explored. The Soviet psychiatrist Vladimir Bekhterev coined the term mission. In 1921, he and the renowned animal trainer Durov conducted experiments involving telepathic commands to dogs. Some of these experiments were quite successful, leading to speculation about applying similar techniques to humans. The game's depiction of mission differs greatly from reality, but it's rooted in real experiments. If you're immersed in this topic, the plot takes on a new layer of meaning. The lab in the Dark Valley is just the beginning of what's to come. It's interesting that the game doesn't simplify such complex ideas. You must already be familiar of these concepts to fully grasp its story. In the Dark Valley lab, the Marked One encounters 3 new mutants for the first time: the Snork, the Poltergeist, and the Pseudo-Giant. Each has its own behavior patterns, with the Poltergeist being particularly unique. It can telekinetically lift objects, boxes, small items, and hurl them at you. Finding the Poltergeist itself is another challenge. X18 is a fairly maze-like level. Nowadays it's hard to get lost in it, but during the game's release navigating it quickly was no small feat. While exploring the area, you'll constantly have burrels and crates flying around, creating an unsettling atmosphere. The game knows how to build tension without relying on scripts or cutscenes. For instance, the Poltergeist can throw objects at you regardless of its location, as long as there is debris nearby. Its AI is designed with this ability in mind. Snorks can perform sudden, long jumps, while the Pseudo-Giant is a massive creature that tries to devour us, occasionally slamming the ground to knock us off our feet. However, the location design for the Pseudo-Giant is somewhat fluid. Its size prevents it from passing through doorways, meaning we can encounter this dangerous monster while standing in a completely safe spot. Pretty stupid. Despite the behavioral differences among mutants, the strategy for dealing with them is always the same: pump them full of bullets until they're dead. There are no special tactics in the game for handling mutants, which is a missed opportunity. They all charge straight at us, with only the Poltergeist and the Controller keeping their distance. In the lab, the Marked One finds documents before losing consciousness and experiencing a dream. In it, an unknown stalker in a cloak approaches the Chernobyl NPP and begins shooting at swarms of rats. Later, it becomes clear that this figure is STRELOK. His face is never shown, but the game starts dropping hints. Honestly, if I had a dream like that, I'd never want to sleep again. No doubt, the CGI cutscenes in the game are fantastic, but have you ever seen dreams with so many transitions and flashes? After bringing the documents to the barkeep, the situation becomes clearer. The brain SCORCHER is man-made, an experimental emitter created by Kaimanov. Parts of it were manufactured in X18, and the documents reference X16, where the finished components were sent. This lab is located near the YANTAR lake, on the premises of an industrial complex. The path there leads through the wild territory. Once there was a large factory there, but now only ruins remain, filled with danger. It's as if all the zone's horrors converge there. In the wild territory, the Marked One witnesses a skirmish between mercenaries and scientists. The mercenaries' ideology is simple: nothing personal, just business. They work for whoever pays them more, engaging in contract killings and robbing stalkers. The Marked One saves Kruglov from the mercenaries and, with his help, reaches the scientist's bunker at YANTAR. I've mentioned artifacts several times, but haven't explained what they are. Artifacts are formations of the zone born from anomalies. Traders eagerly buy them. Sidorich, for instance, deals them on the Big Land, as we learn from side quest descriptions. Scientists also study them. We can sell artifacts or wear them on our belt since they possess various characteristics, both positive and negative. There are no artifacts in the game with only negative properties. Some glow, others only appear at night, and some even move. If you drop the Night Star artifact from your inventory, it might start rolling away in a random direction.
Интересно, вот смотрите, вот они убегут или нет? Ха-ха, они убегают, блядь. Ну что я вам сделал плохого? Ну что я вам сделал?
You can combine artifacts on your belt, but there is no system for creating full-fledged builds. This aspect feels underdeveloped. For example, you could equip a crystal to reduce radiation and fill the remaining slots with 4 stone flowers or night stars. These are radioactive, but the crystal would neutralize the radiation, giving you a significant bullet resistance bonus. However, this setup becomes pointless when you can simply use the artifact Mama's Beads, which grants 5% bullet resistance without any negative effects. The most useful artifacts are those that enhance stamina. These can be found at night near electrical anomalies. Equipping them provides a significant stamina boost, but makes you vulnerable to electricity. However, we know that electrical anomalies can be neutralized with bolts, making this drawback negligible. Learning to sprint through electrical anomalies isn't hard. One flash artifact combined with a sparkler grants virtually infinite stamina, provided you're not overburdened. Such artifacts can be found as early as the Cardon in the tunnel or Agraprom's underground. Once you have these artifacts, energy drinks become irrelevant. There are also artifacts with great stats that have little practical value. For instance, the pellicle artifact provides 30% protection against chemical anomalies. However, there are only a handful of such anomalies in the entire zone. The artifact is expensive and can be reliably found in the wild territory, but it's essentially only good for selling. The battery artifact, which protects against electrical anomalies, is another explain of this problem. Its stats are impressive, but it's practically useless. However, there is a notable bug associated with it. If you find 5 batteries, equip them, and stand in an electrical anomaly, your armor will begin to repair itself. In a game without a repair mechanic, this exploit has its appeal, but is it worth the trouble? Plenty of armor is scattered throughout the locations, and finding replacements isn't difficult. Once you equip good armor, many artifacts lose their value. Medusas, twists, all end up being sold because they're radioactive, and their positive effects are negligible. Just 2% for bullet resistance or rupture protection. Artifacts in S.T.A.L.K.E.R are a strange thing. They're part of the RPG mechanics, yet I rarely use them personally. I think the problem lies in the belt, which can only hold 5 artifacts. Far from few. If it had 15 slots, there would be more room for creative builds. Even a basic Medusa will become more appealing, as rare but useful artifacts will still need to be found. What's also missing are unique properties. For example, an artifact that increases jump height or carry weight, or one that repels dogs and rodents, or conversely attracts them but scares off stronger monsters. That could be interesting. Overall, artifacts in the zone are as abundant as mushrooms after rain. You can find them in stashes, specific spots placed by the developers, and randomly near anomalies, often in excessive quantities. Just walking through Agraprom, you might find a dozen medusas and stoneflowers. This, of course, encourages exploration of locations, because we find real rewards. And it's not always a given that we'll have to fight someone for them. We face a different kind of threat here. But artifacts are so plentiful that they sometimes appear right on the road, breaking the immersion and undermining the concept of artifact hunting. It dulls our enthusiasm for actively searching for them. Artifacts in Shadow of Chernobyl are implemented rather mediocrely. However, they underwent significant rework in Clear Sky. The legendary YANTAR lake. Black, oily, and soul-draining. Just approach the shore and you're gone. Your empty shell sinks into the water floating toward the mist-covered island, and zombies roam everywhere. Once they see you, they start howling and chasing you. You'd better run, as many former stalkers have met their end at this lake. No wandering as zombies. If you manage to bypass the lake and the zombies, you'll find a scientific bunker. Scientists have set up shop there, flown in by helicopter which regularly resupplies them. They've dug a well, and you can talk to them. They buy artifacts and may even give you tasks for a fee, of course. In the scientist's bunker, Professor Sakharov explains to the Marked One what he knows about Lab X-16, but getting inside won't be easy. The lab contains a device that emits psi radiation. Sakharov has a protective psi helmet, but it needs calibration. For this, several measurements must be taken with his assistant. Once the data is gathered, Sakharov calibrates the helmet, allowing the Marked One to enter the lab. The lab was built after the 1986 disaster. In an attempt to cover up the experiments conducted there, a program called Shroud of Darkness was launched. However, it malfunctioned, resulting in psi radiation blanketing the factory and the lake. At the center of the lab is a massive brain in a flask, an artificially grown biological psi emitter. Stalkers exposed to psi radiation for prolonged periods turn into zombies. The Marked One manages to disable the device and finds Ghost's corpse, a stalker from STRELOK's group. Alongside Ghost, he discovers critical documents and an audio recording mentioning their mutual friend, the Doctor. The guide at the Cardon likely knows the Doctor's location. After disabling the device, the Marked One loses consciousness again and experiences another bizarre dream. In the dream, an unknown stalker is approached by another carrying a strange artifact. The nature of this artifact is never explained in the game, nor can it be found during gameplay. Suddenly, the scene changes, and the second stalker collapses, bloodied. The unknown stalker saves him from death and asks, "Where will you go now?" The response is grim.
Север. На север.
This dream sheds light on the protagonist's past. It shows the Doctor healing a wounded stalker. All the characters are presented from an external perspective. The Marked One notes in his PDA that he experiences the dream exactly as shown in the cinematic. If you compare the face of the wounded stalker with that of the protagonist in the intro cinematic, it becomes clear they are the same person. We know that STRELOK reached the center of the zone at the Chernobyl NPP. The stalker in the dream is hidden there as well. Piecing everything together, it becomes apparent. STRELOK is the Marked One. While the protagonist's in-game model has a different appearance, this was later updated in Call of Pripyat to better match the CGI cutscenes. The protagonist doesn't fully understand the dreams he experiences, but for the player, the second dream is a massive spoiler. After retrieving the documents, the Marked One returns to the barkeep. Together they deduce that the brain SCORCHER is located at the Red Forest and can be disabled, thereby opening the path to the center of the zone for everyone. As Sidorovich said, those areas are untouched, a treasure trove of artifacts and so far and so on. All that's left to do is infiltrate the bunker beneath the antennas and disable the brain SCORCHER. We already have a prototype helmet to protect against psi radiation, so in theory, we shouldn't die near the brain SCORCHER. At this point, the game's plot begins to falter. The Marked One often writes notes in his PDA, sharing his thoughts about what's happening to him and around him. Before heading to the brain SCORCHER, he makes a strange note in his PDA. In it, the hero writes that he spoke to a psycho who told him that the brain SCORCHER operates at full power only during certain times, weakening at night. This has no connection to the game's final version. The Stalker plot underwent many rewrites, and the ideas referenced in this note were scrapped by release. However, the developers forgot to rewrite or remove the note. For those playing the game in detail and reading everything, this inconsistency can lead to confusion. It's worth noting that you shouldn't rush to the brain SCORCHER right away. First, you need to return to the Cardon and find the guide. Preferably do so quickly, as random events, a stray dog or a bandit could kill him. The guide informs us that the Doctor is currently at STRELOK's stash. Upon arrival, things get a little surreal.
Эй, Стрелок! Давай, приходи в себя. Вот. Так-то лучше.
The Doctor calls us STRELOK and mentions a tripwire we once set ourselves. Yet, during our first visit to this place, the tripwire isn't there. There is not even a game model for it. One possible explanation is that the tripwire exists in the narrative but isn't represented in the game due to a missing model. The script still encourages it, and the Marked One somehow avoids triggering it during his first visit. However, this feels more like a forgotten detail by the writers, a mystery of the zone left unresolved. From the Doctor we learn our true identity, but the quest to kill the STRELOK remains active. The PDA doesn't include any new notes reflecting the protagonist's thoughts on this revelation. Logically, the Marked One's goal should shift. Instead of trying to kill himself, he should now be seeking answers, why this mission was given to him and by whom. Besides, this plot twist has been hinted at several times already, but the hero has 3 different faces in the game. Therefore, the technique from the first dream, where the STRELOK turns around but his face is hidden, doesn't work. This is the result of many re-evaluations during development, including the protagonist's appearance, but we are not considering build content or design documents, only the finished game. And because the hero's appearance is different, this technique doesn't achieve its purpose, and why it's even there isn't entirely clear. How does the protagonist develop throughout the game? From his notes we know he frequently questions his surroundings and occasionally expresses emotions, but what about something else? He's just a stoic man determined to kill the STRELOK, recover his memories, and eliminate anything in his way without hesitation. His dialogue is sparse, understood, got it, okay, and I agree. The only in-game moment that slightly reveals his personality is his conversation with the guide. The Marked One is simply lying to him to get to the Doctor. Even then, his true motivations remain unclear. Is he driven by survival? Maybe revenge? A desire to uncover the truth about his past? No definitive answer is provided. His motivation fluctuates depending on the situation and sometimes seems inconsistent. If we analyze the entire narrative again, the Marked One agrees to work for the traders because Sidorovich promised to find out something about the STRELOK, but in the end he finds out on his own. And after that he continues to work for the barkeep, agrees to disable the brain SCORCHER. Why? To unravel the mystery of the zone, because according to the Doctor he always wanted to do that?
Судя по всему, это единственная возможность пробраться к настоящей тайне зоны, которую ты всегда пытался разгадать. Это все, Стрелок. Теперь пришло время прощаться.
Total Amnesia is a classic narrative designed to reset a protagonist's past and grant players freedom of choice, but in the case of the Marked One, it feels only simplistic. Amnesia fails to explain many aspects of his behavior and decisions. The Marked One's interactions with other characters often feel superficial. He completes their tasks, but deep relationships don't form between them. This lack of emotional connection to other characters makes him even more isolated and unengaging. He is more of a participant in events, rather than their initiator. While he carries out the order of other characters, he's not the true driving force of the narrative. This lack of initiative makes him less compelling as a central figure of the story. The moments where he begins to play a key role in events come later, but by them the final is just around the corner. These moments will turn the Marked One into a legend, someone whose name will be spoken around campfires. He will leave a huge mark on the history of the zone, but the way it's shown still won't reveal him as a person. Therefore, I don't understand how one can truly connect with him. He's frankly an empty character. The plot of S.T.A.L.K.E.R has always raised many questions, but people don't love the game for its story. Atmosphere. Now we've come to the game's strongest feature, the abstract concept that no one can fully define, the unique atmosphere that everyone experiences differently. It's time to finally understand what it is. The atmosphere of S.T.A.L.K.E.R isn't just a set of audio and visual effects. It's a comprehensive sensation created by the interplay of 5 elements. The first such element is immersion in the world. It consists of the detail of the locations, their sound design, interaction with objects, visual effects, the behavior of NPCs and anomalies. The game's locations aren't just a collection of textures and models. The developers worked on every detail, creating a sense of realism and desolation. Pripyat isn't just ruined buildings, it's a story told through preserved objects. Children's toys in schools, newspapers on the streets, abandoned furniture in apartments. These details tell the story of a life that was suddenly cut short, creating a sense of presence and abandonment. Or, for example, an abandoned factory, rusting mechanisms, scattered tools, the feeling of cold metal and dust. The careful design of the locations gives the game world a unique signature, making players feel like they're in a real place. Sound plays a huge role in building the atmosphere. The sounds of wind and rain, the rustling of leaves, the cries of mutants in the distance, and the sounds of gunfire. The ambient sounds of underground and above-ground locations create a unique soundscape that complements the story of the game world. Ambient sounds significantly contribute to the atmosphere, underlining what we see on screen. Players can interact with some objects in the game, opening doors, picking up items and reading documents. These actions are not only mechanically necessary, but also enhance the sense of presence. The world is dangerous, but it's tangible. For instance, you can pick up a dead stalker's PDA and learn their story. These are mostly plot points, but they make the game world more real and emotionally rich in our eyes. Weather constantly changes, affecting visibility and gameplay. Fog, rain and night aren't just decorations, but integral parts of the game world. Fog limits visibility, heightening feelings of unease and uncertainty. Rain adds gloom and hopelessness. Night makes the zone even more dangerous and mysterious. But even in such an environment, the game knows how to play with contrasts and our emotions. After returning from an expedition, you might find yourself in a safe place. The danger lies out there, beyond the duty checkpoint, but here, in the bar, stalkers chat, play guitar, share stories and sleep. You can talk to them to learn more about the world. They are part of it. NPCs react to events around them. When you disable the psi emitter in X16, stalkers start going to YANTAR. If they see mutants, they open fire. They don't like it when you walk around with weapons in a safe place. Mutants are in their habitats. They fight each other, eat the bodies of killed creatures, and rest when nothing threatens them. Observing them reveals these details. All these make the world more alive and realistic. All these techniques contribute to the feeling of presence in this world. Achieving this result is crucial for creating the atmosphere that prevails in the game. In S.T.A.L.K.E.R, it works brilliantly. The second atmospheric element is the feeling of danger and unease. This isn't just about random encounters with enemies, but a constantly present tension permeating the entire gameplay. It's achieved through unpredictability, sound design, visual effects, anomalies, enemy dynamics, limited resources, psychological aspects, non-linearity, and randomness. We shouldn't know what awaits us around the next corner. At any moment, an unexpected encounter with a mutant, a bandit attack, or falling into an anomaly could happen. The constant expectation of danger prevents relaxation. Even relatively safe locations can harbor unexpected threats. The A-Life simulation system contributes to this. I've already mentioned the situations it can generate. We might arrive at the garbage and find stalkers there. A short time later, in the same place, there might be mutants. This scene is pre-programmed by the game designer and unfolds after completing a specific story quest. However, it still adds a touch of unpredictability on a first playthrough. Sound also plays a key role in creating an atmosphere of danger. The sounds of gunfire and mutant cries, which I've already mentioned, create a feeling of constant tension and anticipation of something bad. Even silence can be unsettling, foreshadowing danger. Unexpected sounds keep the player constantly on guard. Fog, rain and darkness intensify the feeling of anxiety and uncertainty. Limited visibility creates a sense of vulnerability. But even in daylight, due to peculiarities of the graphic style and lighting, there is a sense of somewhat blurred visibility, amplifying the feeling of unease. Anomalies are not just obstacles to be avoided, but a constantly present threat. They can be inconspicuous and lead to death. Caution is necessary, and constantly surveying the surroundings is crucial. Even knowledge of an anomaly doesn't guarantee guarantee safety, as we can always make a mistake. Enemies in the game don't just stand still, they patrol territories, set ambushes and converse during combat. During a fight, they can move from one cover to another, attacking you or waiting for you to emerge. There is a high risk to encountering a pack of dogs or several bloodsuckers at once, and you might not even know where their lair is. Such an encounter will make you lose confidence that you'll have everything under control in the next location. Limited supplies of ammunition, medicine and food amplify the feeling of vulnerability. Every bullet and every bandage counts. Resource scarcity makes the player more cautious and forces careful planning. Anything we can carry is left in a box. We try not to buy medkits, but to find them in stashes to save money for more expensive items. Limited resources force us to return to dangerous areas. In addition, the game impacts the player on a psychological level. The world of the zone of alienation is hostile and you're always on the brink of survival. Before entering a laboratory, the tension always increases. The unknown inside causes anxiety. An unexpected encounter with a powerful mutant at night amplifies our fear. The feeling of constant danger and anxiety creates deep immersion in the atmosphere. The third atmospheric element is loneliness and isolation. This isn't simply the absence of friendly NPCs in dangerous places, but a profound feeling of alienation and vulnerability in a hostile world. It's achieved through the open world and freedom of exploration, the hostile environment, distract of NPCs, the storyline, sound design, visual effects, and the lack of constant allies. The game offers an open world to explore, but the experience always takes place in solitude. We wander through contaminated forests, fields, and abandoned factories, encountering only rare and often unreliable NPCs. This intensifies the feeling of isolation, highlighting our fragility in a dangerous world. Unlike many modern games where constant interaction with other characters is common, in S.T.A.L.K.E.R it's the exception rather than the rule. The zone is a place where everyone is for themselves. Relying on help from others isn't always wise. Even if we help a bandits fend off a pack of dogs, they'll still try to kill us. Trust is rare, emphasizing our vulnerability and loneliness. This is further reinforced by the constant distract of NPCs. We might help a wounded rookie in the dark valley, and he will lead us to a stalker camp where, as a token of gratitude, stalkers will rip us off and demand we leave immediately. The game tells us that stalkers are neutral towards us, but in reality, this isn't always the case. The unreliability of NPCs is further underscored by the fact that neutral or friendly stalkers can die during a firefight, therefore we can't be entirely sure of them. The story of the marked one who has lost his memory and is trying to survive, constantly encountering the zone's mysteries, also plays a role in shaping the atmosphere. Amnesia cuts him off from the past, leaving him isolated in a new hostile world. He has no close people to rely on, and traders constantly try to profit from him by giving out various tasks. Sound design also contributes. Sometimes complete silence can arise, broken only by the sounds of the wind. On a psychological level, this emphasizes our isolation in a vast world. Abandoned buildings, mountains of garbage, radioactive forests, and all the other landmarks of this world create a visual sense of emptiness. The vast scale of the zone further emphasizes our insignificance in this place. Unlike many games with linear storylines, in S.T.A.L.K.E.R you can't always count on the support of allies. Interactions with other characters in the storyline are always episodic and short-lived, after which you're once again alone facing the dangers of the zone. The feeling of loneliness and isolation perfectly immerses us in the game world, destroyed by a man-made catastrophe. As you've understood, I don't just mention visuals or sound repeatedly. Each aspect of the game, in the context of atmosphere creation, performs several tasks at once. Even anomalies, which require solitary exploration in search of artifacts, can psychologically emphasize the fragility of our lives and, consequently, strengthen the feeling of loneliness. The fourth atmospheric element is mystery and mysticism. This isn't just a presence of unusual phenomena, but a well-thought-out system that creates an atmosphere of intrigue and compels the player to seek answers to numerous questions. It manifests in unexplained phenomena, hidden information, ambivalent characters, open questions, folklore, and legends. The zone of alienation is full of oddities, anomalies, mutants, artifacts, their nature isn't fully revealed, leaving room for speculation and theories. This stimulates the player's imagination and compels them to seek explanations, immersing themselves in a world of riddles. The game attempts scientific explanations for some phenomena, but these don't dispel the aura of mysticism, leaving room for interpretation. The game's scenario is structured so that the player themselves searches for meaning in what is happening. The Wish Granter, a mysterious crystal, evokes various feelings in stalkers, from fear to a desire to reach it as quickly as possible. In most endings, its nature is not explained at all. Even in the true endings, the explanation of its nature leaves food of thought, making it one of the most enigmatic elements of the game. Thanks to the visual and sound effects of anomalies, they appear as manifestations of some hidden force. The bizarre forms of mutants and their unusual behavior also add to the game's mystical component. Information about the zone and the events occurring within it is provided fragmentarily through phone documents, NPC conversations, rumors, and legends. The player assembles a puzzle, gradually uncovering secrets, but the complete picture remains hidden even though the main ending reveals the cause of the zone's creation. This creates a constant sense of intrigue and a desire to learn more. The information can be contradictory, adding complexity and depth. Central and episodic characters are not always unambiguous heroes or villains. Each has their own story and understandable motivation. However, the ease with which the main character is used for their own purposes by traders, for example, makes one question whether they are so straightforward. Room is left for interpretation. Trusting them is sometimes a complex issue, and the game doesn't explicitly address this. The game features various legends and stories from stalkers about the zone and its dangers. These stories, which can be read in the PDA, highlight the unknown. The line between reality and fiction is blurred, amplifying the effect. Mystery and mysticism are integral parts of game's narrative and atmosphere. They create depth and intrigue, compelling the player to seek answers, build theories, and immerse themselves in the world of secrets of the zone of alienation. The fifth element is realism within the setting. Essentially, this encompasses everything I've already discussed: the detailed world, the survival simulation manifested in resource management, the need for healing and sustenance, NPC behavior, weather effects, the physical impact of the environment, economics, ballistics, and physics. All of this makes us believe in what's happening on screen. The success of creating the atmosphere is based on harmonious combination of these 5 key elements. And thanks to the intentionally left space for different interpretations, players' perceptions of the atmosphere can differ. That's the beauty of S.T.A.L.K.E.R. The road to the brain SCORCHER leads through the army warehouses. There is an army base there, an old village, and a small lake. A faction called Freedom has formed on the army base. Anarchists who believe the zone is a free sanctuary, that it's unconquerable and you can only negotiate with it, that the zone is a good object for research and study and should in no way be a military staging ground. Moreover, the zone shouldn't be hidden from the rest of the world. The faction's color is green, symbolizing independence and hope for better times. Their motto is "Anarchy is the mother of order." Freedom fighters spend their free time differently. They have no strict discipline. Some like to drink, others to smoke hookah with something more interesting. Freedom is in conflict with the Duty faction. We've already encountered their fighters near the 100 Reds bar. Duty is a militarized volunteer army whose goal is to fight the zone. Its members live by a strict military code. The faction is characterized by strict discipline and military paraphernalia. Duty's ideology is based on protecting humanity from the zone's dangers and then completely destroying it. Because of this, Duty deals with the zone's internal problems, eliminating mutants, bandits, and dissenting anarchists from Freedom. Any artifacts Duty finds during raids are given to scientists. We can maintain neutrality with both factions, or side with one. They don't give out story quests, so the choice has little impact. Initially, the developers planned to give the player the opportunity opportunity to join one of the factions, but this idea was abandoned before release. However, the possibility of joining Freedom still exists. As is known, everything that was cut before release partially remained. To join Freedom, you need to complete the factions quests in a slightly different order, and then a script that developers forgot to cut will trigger. However, there is no real benefit to joining the faction. You won't even get access to their arsenal. The guard will remain in place, and you'll have to bypass him using unconventional methods. The road to the bar will be closed because duty will become enemies, and you'll have to fight your way to the barkeep. Joining Freedom only makes things worse. There's a reputation system in the game, but it works strangely. If we kill everyone indiscriminately, eventually all natural stalkers will become enemies. But if we start helping everyone, killing enemies and healing our own, only a couple of people will become our friends. And this won't affect anything except the color of the indicator on the minimap. I haven't noticed any discounts from traders, but with bad reputation, prices do become higher. The problem with reputation is that it's not used in the storyline. Quests aren't variable, so there is no choice between good and bad actions in the game. But what if you join Freedom and then sneak into the bar? After all, there are stealth mechanics in the game. Yeah, there are, but it's better not to mention them. The basic mechanics work. Enemies can see and hear us, and we have visibility and audibility indicators on the screen. However, the developers followed a plan codenamed Twisted Configs turned Configs, resulting in enemies constantly noticing us, regardless of our actions. Ironically, despite their keen sight and hearing, they don't react to our flashlight at all. Furthermore, if one enemy notices us, they all automatically do, immediately aiming in our direction. Many game areas aren't conducive to stealth gameplay. I can already anticipate you wanting to mention YouTube videos of players completed the game using stealth. While this is true, and those players are skilled, they clearly demonstrate the impossibility of stealth gameplay without exploiting bugs. One player uses safe scamming to disrupt enemy AI, another exploits the lack of sound during jumps and landings, essentially bouncing between enemies instead of sneaking to remain silent. While interesting to watch, this is fundamentally flawed game design. Completing to the entire game stealthily doesn't automatically equate to the game having functional stealth mechanics. S.T.A.L.K.E.R is a prime example of this. Approaching the brain scorcher is a barrier designed to protect against attacks from mutants and monolith fighters. It was initially created by the military for the same purpose, but after they lost their positions at the warehouses, it passed to Freedom. The monolithics are strange fellows. They don't collect artifacts, don't contact anyone, don't trade, and shoot at everyone they see. They believe in the existence of the monolith and aggressively protect it from other stalkers. They fight for their ideology and try to expand the sphere of influence. Rumor has it their base is located somewhere in Pripyat. The Marked One crosses the barrier and heads toward the brain scorcher via the Red Forest, a terrifying place. You can easily disappear here, even if you've been lucky all your life. Anyone who gets too close to the brain scorcher goes insane, turning into a zombie and wandering aimlessly through the zone. Just empty shells of people remain. No one returns from there in their right mind. Closer to the antennas, the Marked One begins to see hallucinations, but the Psi helmet saves him from death. Under the antennas, he finds the entrance to X10, the control bunker from the brain scorcher. On the lower level is the system for switching the installation on and off. Yeah, another circuit breaker, just like in X16. For some reason, all the complex installations in S.T.A.L.K.E.R are deactivated using a single circuit breaker. The Marked One pulls it, deactivates the brain scorcher, then blacks out himself and sees a third dream. The mysterious crystal, the monolith, the wish granter, towards which our hero reaches out. This time he realizes that he is seeing himself and writes in his notes that he must go to the monolith. As soon as he comes to, he hears its call. The brain scorcher is deactivated and the road to the zone sanctuary is open. Everyone who can be bothered has already set off. Whoever gets there first gets everything. The military is also busy trying to take control of the Chernobyl NPP territory. The operation is called Monolith, but the doctor warns the marked one that the tales of the wish granter are just myths. In Pripyat, he is left a decoder capable of unlocking the door beneath the sarcophagus, where the zone's true nature is hidden. Approaching the Red Forest, the game becomes significantly more action-packed. The location is swarming with monolith soldiers and you'll have to fight your way to the brain SCORCHER. Therefore, it's time to discuss the combat system. This is a rather controversial topic. Combat feels very sluggish by today's standards, yet it includes mechanics absent in some modern games. NPCs and mutants play out injury animations. We can shoot a S.T.A.L.K.E.R in the leg, and he'll briefly stop attacking because he feels pain. Almost all mutants start limping after taking significant damage. This enhances the impact. Enemies react to the damage they receive. In Half-Life 2, for example, combined soldiers rarely showed pain and didn't play out any animations. This was explained by the plot, but it made the shooting feel a bit clunky. In the release version of second S.T.A.L.K.E.R, mutants don't limp when seriously injured. This is a clear downgrade, and it's present in Shadow of Chernobyl. There is also ballistics, trajectory, range, bullet velocity and all that. When firing from a VSS Vintares, the bullet will drop after a while. At long distances, you have to aim above the head to hit the target accurately. For its time, this was awesome. But as soon as we start shooting, the feeling that something is wrong with the shooting doesn't go away. The main problem is the frankly weak stopping power of most guns in the game. Good assault rifles appear somewhere in the wild territory. These are NATO-type weapons. Everything before them is frankly trash. We might find an AK, but we won't be able to comfortably play through the whole game with it. We might like its rate of fire or reload speed, but towards the end of the game, we'll encounter enemies in good armor, against whom it will be a weak weapon. However, in the army warehouses, you can find the G36, which deals significantly more damage. This is solely due to the configurations. Essentially, we're forced to change our weapons throughout the game, regardless of the difficulty level or our personal gaming skills. But this isn't a full-fledged RPG where everything is tied to numbers, but a shooter with RPG elements. At some point, the constant weapon switching can become a bit tiring. We can put up with this, but pistols are even worse. They are pointless. In reality, a pistol is a second chance weapon. Drawing a pistol is always faster than reloading a rifle, but in Shadow of Chernobyl, the reload speed of a rifle is either identical to or faster than switching to a pistol. At the same time, pistols always deal less damage than a rifle of their tier. Stalkers carry a PM, an unshorted version of the AK. Soldiers carry a Ford and a Kalashnikov. Freedom carries a SIG 220 and SIG 550. There is no clear combination in the game, but such an abstract tier system can be traced. Therefore, as soon as you find a pistol that's stronger than yours, you always find a rifle at the same moment that's also better than yours. The exception is the Big Ben, a modified Desert Eagle, which can be found in a single instance in the wild territory. It's powerful and accurate, albeit with high recoil. The question arises, why even have pistols in this game? I found only two situations where a pistol is genuinely useful. The first is if we reload in a shotgun. In this case, a pistol can indeed save the day, although the game has a reload while sprinting mechanic, so nothing prevents us from running and reloading simultaneously. The second situation is when climbing a vertical ladder. Any other weapon is holstered, except for a pistol. But there are very few vertical ladders surrounded by enemies in the game. The quality of the reload animations is the final straw. Some are done well, while others are very clunky, with flaws visible to the naked eye. Those awful hand models that practically break when we equip a SPAS-12, the strange and inconsistent positioning of weapons on the screen with guns of the same type always displayed at different coordinates. The lack of a weapon and armor repair mechanic also raises many questions. Each gun and armor piece has its own durability. Pure armor provides less protection, and the broken weapon often jams and has increased spread while firing. For some reason, we can't repair them. The trouble is that there are unique weapons in the game with improved characteristics, and once they become unusable, and that's left is to discard them. Sometimes you can find a unique weapon already in poor condition. I never understood the point of that. And there is a problem where the unique features of armor best work in reverse. On YANTAR, there is a healing burial armor, the description of which states indicates that bleeding will stop faster. Up to a certain point, it works as intended, but then the bleeding only intensifies. Or this bug manifests itself immediately. Therefore, it's risky to go north in such imposter armor. But the zone is like that. It likes to throw surprises. Mechanically, the game's combat system is from the decade before last. Except for the lack of repairs and a couple of oddities, it's excellent. But the configurations, incorrect timings, and animation problems spoil everything. Despite all the advantages of the combat system, shooting in the game, in my opinion, is simply boring. However, the one thing you can't fault is the sound of the gunshots. Though I noticed one thing related to rapid-fire weapons. In the game, all weapon firing sounds are played with interruption. That is, each subsequent shot sound interrupts the previous one. Therefore, we can hear all the shot sounds completely if we're firing a rapid-fire weapon. Sometimes the interruption is clearly audible. The path to the Chernobyl nuclear power plant lies through Pripyat. As soon as we arrive in the city, the game shifts heavily towards a shooter rather than exploration. Moreover, the road we must follow and fight through is quite linear. Throughout most of the game, we could choose which side to approach a group of enemies at story locations. The game always offered multiple paths to the objective. We could enter the abandoned car park from the side, just like the military base on the Agroprom Research Institute. We could reach the bandits in the dark valley through a pipe and shorten the path to the brain SCORCHER through the forest. But in Pripyat, this idea starts to break down. Invisible walls are everywhere, even in places where it's clearly possible to pass. Take a couple of steps and an enemy will inevitably spawn on the roof according to the script. The game turns into an action movie with staged gameplay, which in my opinion doesn't suit S.T.A.L.K.E.R. Before Pripyat, the game maintained a balance between firefights and calm exploration. But here, the breakthrough through Pripyat develops so rapidly that there is no time to study the level, though it's full of exciting places. The school, the dawn helicopter, the stadium, the Ferris wheel. But the purpose of visiting such points of interest is primarily contemplative because there are no side quests or unique items here. In general, Pripyat is one of the most flawed locations. There are quite a few errors in the level geometry. They exist in other locations, but here they've gone overboard. Holes in the terrain, invisible walls, incorrect scaling of individual game models, all of this is visible to the naked eye, like the flying bush in the garbage. It's even strange why this is the case. After all, Pripyat wasn't created in the final stages of development. A trailer featuring it was published back in 2003. Anyway, here we find the decoder and head to the Chernobyl NPP with it, where a real battle unfolds. The military is trying to seize control of the territory, but clashes with well-armed monolith soldiers. Suddenly, an mission starts, and we're not given time to explore this level. This is Chernobyl, the heart of the zone. Let me explore everything here. One of the most visually unique locations, probably in the history of the entire gaming industry at that time. A dangerous place in reality recreated in the game. But instead of giving the player a chance to wander around calmly, the developers decided to make a level with completely staged firefights and an mission to rush us to the sarcophagus. In my opinion, this is the worst decision in the entire game. I'm not just talking about staged firefights in the final levels. The fact is that here, all the enemies are standing in predetermined places, waiting for us. They don't see us, but they are already looking in our direction. In other locations, such solutions were episodic and occurred only a couple of times. It's time to talk in detail about the modular artificial intelligence system and the A-Life simulation system. A-Life operates in two modes. The first is online mode, which a radius of 150 meters around the player. This can be easily changed in the configuration files. Within this radius, all living beings are loaded and behave as realistically as possible. They can sit by the campfire, go somewhere, and react to dangers around them, even if we don't see them. The game despawns all creatures outside this radius, but they still remain in the game and live by simplified rules. We won't see them, even if we look through binoculars, but they are there. Such a system is necessary so that all stalkers can freely move around the game world and locations where we aren't correctly present. We can walk through the zone and see a stalker who has just appeared at the transition to another location. He actually went from another level to this one. It took him some time, but here he is. That is, in offline mode, NPCs exist, go somewhere and do something, but according to very simplified rules. The strength of the AI system lies in the fact that live exist where we are not. And the developers came up with an interesting trick related to transitions between locations. For example, let's take the garbage and the 100 reds bar. For us, the transition to another location is located here, but behind it we see a detailed section of the level. Why is it needed if we can't move through it? It's actually made for NPCs. Their transition to the location is at the very end, much further than ours. They walk towards it slowly, and time moves forward. And when they finally cross over to the garbage, we can check the clock and see that the transition for the NPCs happened instantly, but in our eyes it took some time. Random encounters with NPCs do create interesting gameplay situations, but it's essential to understand why they wander the zone. The A-Life concept was revised several times during the game's development. Its initial version was planned to be much more advanced. The Stalkers had several objectives they pursued. This motivated them to leave safe places, fight their offenders, search for artifacts, all regardless of our actions. By the release, this idea was significantly cut down, leaving only one objective in the game: to reach a safe place. There are safe places and spawn points in the game. When we kill enemies, after a while they reappear in the zone at a spawn point, but with different names. Specific actions are prescribed for each stalker in safe places: patrolling the area, sitting by the campfire, sleeping, and so on. There should be a specific number of stalkers in each such location. If it's full, stalkers are denied entry. But if there's a shortage, the game spawns a stalker and assigns them to a safe place. The point is that the spawn point isn't always in a safe place. It might even be on a different location. When an NPC appears, the first thing he does is ask the system, "What should I do?" It tells him where there is a shortage of stalkers, and he starts heading there. Here we come to what distinguishes the original idea from what ultimately happened. The player isn't told why stalkers are traveling along the roads. It's important to show that life in the zone doesn't depend on our actions, but in reality, it does. We're the ones killing everyone, after which the game respawns the NPCs. In the storyline, we disable the installation under YANTAR and the brain SCORCHER. These are dangerous territories with many enemies, but after the story quests, passage there is open to everyone. Scripts are activated, causing stalkers to occupy initially closed-off safe places. That's why we can see a group of loners and duty members on YANTAR, and on the Red Forest we encounter veterans heading to Pripyat. All random events happen because of us. Bandits don't just randomly hit towards the abandoned car park, we kill them, after which they respawn in the game. Sometimes we can see new arrivals in the rookie village, even though no one died there. This is explained simply. At the beginning of the game, the village already has a shortage of stalkers, therefore new guys appear there. But if you stop and wait for a full in-game day, everyone will disperse to their points of interest and stay there forever. None of them will leave because their ultimate goal is to be in those locations. Only in rare cases is the ultimate goal to reach a point and displace an enemy squad from another nearby spot. But this is prescripted by the developer and doesn't work in offline mode. We have to approach the place for it to happen. Therefore, once we stop doing anything, everyone will reach their designated locations. And that's the end of it. This means there will be no one to spawn because everyone is alive. And there is no need to, as all the safe zones have required numbers of stalkers. Stalker actions in safe zones can vary. Besides sleeping and playing the guitar, NPCs can be made to stare intently at a single point. Therefore, starting from the Red Forest, we often see monolith soldiers who don't move, sit in specific places and wait for us. Some stalkers are completely disconnected from the system and simply stand at their coordinates. This is the result of individual intervention in the logic of a specific NPC. Everything said also applies to mutants, but in a more simplified form. The same system mixed with scripted spawning. As we progress, familiar locations become more dangerous. On the Agroprom we might encounter a bloodsucker that was never there before. A pack of cider dogs appears in the garbage, and Tushkanos appear in the wild territory, but all of this happens after completing specific story quests. The game tracks our progress and spawns these mutants at certain points to prevent boredom during backtracking. Moreover, it does this even in places where there is no reason for us to return. Tell me, have you ever visited X18 and X10 after completing all the quests there? I think not. Therefore, you probably never knew that 3 snorks appear near the stairs in X18 and Tushkanos appear on the approach to the switch in X10. It's not enough just to make stalkers move around locations. It's important to teach them how to navigate. This is where artificial intelligence comes in. Thanks to the programmers, the AI already knows what cover is, who is friend and foe, how to shoot, and how to react to different events. The NPC is already trained in these skills, so it can easily navigate anywhere it finds itself. We can spawn 2 stalkers without weapons, place a Kalashnikov between them, and tell them to kill each other. They'll understand without issue that they first need to grab the rifle, as it's the only way to achieve the goal, and will run towards it. In rare cases, a stalker might run away if they sense serious danger. If we open fire on an enemy squad, the NPCs scatter to cover and start coordinating their actions. They can communicate with each other during combat, ask each other for help, and these aren't staged scenes. If a stalker is in cover and then suddenly decides to leave it, shouting to a comrade to cover them, it's because they decided to do so based on the skills initially programmed into them by the developers. However, this is hard to notice now. The artificial intelligence is excellent, but it's designed for gamers from the decade before last. Our overall skill level has increased, and we kill enemies faster than they can react. They don't stand a chance when we rush in at full sprint and take everyone out. The NPCs can't do anything with fast and aggressive gameplay. The AI showed its full potential when I intentionally played like a newbie, and sometimes it created genuinely interesting situations, but hardly anyone will be interested to intentionally playing poorly, unless it's for personal study of the AI's features. Therefore, the AI in the game is good, but most often we don't see its full potential because of our increased skill level. For some reason, the developers didn't teach the NPCs skills like looting corpses and changing into other armor, but if you drop a good gun in front of them, they can pick it up and start using it. NPCs also don't know how to search for artifacts or avoid anomalies. If stalkers are heading towards an anomaly, they are almost guaranteed to die in it and won't react to the damage they receive, which is quite strange. However, we can find various artifacts when searching corpses, but they are generated randomly. Also, the AI doesn't know how to throw grenades or heal wounded allies. Modders had to implement these features in modifications like AMK 1.4.1 and AI PAK back in 2008. Some scripts and functions from these modifications were used by the developers in Clear Sky and Call of Pripyat. Within the sarcophagus, STRELOK slaughters hordes of mannerless soldiers and finds the legendary wish granter, but instead of making a wish, he follows the doctor's advice, finds a secret door, opens it with the decoder, and enters a laboratory beneath the sarcophagus. After prolonged firefights, he realizes that the monolith isn't a crystal of extraterrestrial origin, but a psi installation that distracts stalkers who reach the center of the zone, zombifying them and turning them into monolith soldiers. The hero destroys the installation, and a representative of Sea Consciousness contacts him, a group of scientists who conducted experiments on the noosphere. But after a fatal error that led to the second disaster and the formation of the zone, the scientists' goals changed. The Sea Consciousness began to contain the noosphere's flaws and attempt to control it to make the world ideal, removing all the negativity that humanity had created. All these experiments required reliable protection, so the Kaimanov emitter, known as the brain SCORCHER, was built. Anyone who fell under its influence and wasn't turned into a zombie went to the center of the zone, fell under the influence of another installation under the sarcophagus, was encoded under the S.T.A.L.K.E.R program to perform specific tasks, and replenished the ranks of the monolith. Their memory was erased in the process. Some of the encoded were transported on death trucks to the zone's border. After one such trip, STRELOK became a threat to the Sea Consciousness, and all agents were ordered to eliminate him. Due to an unclear error, STRELOK found himself among these agents, hence receiving the task of killing himself. The Sea Consciousness representative offers STRELOK to join them and help contain the noosphere's flaws, because their forces are currently unequal. If STRELOK agrees, he lies in a capsule, sensors are attached to him, and what happens to him and the zone next is unknown.
Давно я стрелка не видел. Неужели он погиб? Нет, этого не может быть. Он из любой передряги выберется. С ним все в порядке.
STRELOK can refuse to join the sea consciousness. In this case, he exits to the other side of the Chernobyl NPP, reaches a location under the generators and shoots all the capsules with the scientists' bodies inside. After some time, he finds himself in a strange place that doesn't resemble the zone. Everything around is blooming and fragrant, and he lies down on the grass, completely bewildered by what has happened. What happened to the zone isn't explained in this ending either.
Я не знаю, правильно я поступил или нет. И, наверное, никогда не узнаю. Но я сделал выбор. Надеюсь, он был верным.
Ебать сюжет!
In the context of the game's atmosphere, the ending is excellent, but on its own it leaves many questions unanswered. The destruction of the sea consciousness is essentially an act of violence against an unknown, potentially dangerous, but also potentially beneficial phenomenon. The game doesn't provide enough information to assess the threat it poses unequivocally. STRELOK acts intuitively, based on personal experience and fear of the unknown. This choice isn't supported by clear arguments, leaving the player with a sense of incompleteness. What would have happened if we had left everything as it was? What will be the long-term consequences of both decisions? The game doesn't provide answers, creating a feeling of an unfinished story. STRELOK's motivation in this ending isn't entirely clear. Fear of the unknown isn't a very strong argument, especially considering that he has already faced far more serious dangers. A choice based on a deeper understanding of the sea consciousness, its nature and its potential consequences for humanity, rather than instinctive fear, would have been more convincing. To some extent, the ending contradicts STRELOK's image as a cold-blooded and calculating professional. The destruction of the sea consciousness seems like an impulsive act, inconsistent with his usual behavior. A more thorough exploration of STRELOK's psychological state after making the decision, his doubts and reflections, could have added emotional depth and persuasiveness to the final. On the other hand, the destruction of the sea consciousness flasks can be interpreted in different ways, but the game doesn't offer any guidance on the correct interpretation. This leaves room for various speculations. So, the ending is seemingly bad because in its attempts to explain everything, it explains nothing and doesn't reveal the main character's motivation, but at the same time, the ending is also good because all this understatement significantly complements the atmosphere and aesthetic of the game. This is the paradox of our beloved zone. The term noosphere is mentioned at the end of the game. This is another term without which it's impossible to fully understand the game's plot. The noosphere is the hypothetical sphere of interaction between society and nature, within which intelligent human actively becomes the determining factor and grows. This concept was popularized by the biogeochemist Vladimir Vernadsky and the philosopher Pierre de Chardin. Vernadsky defined the noosphere as a new state of the biosphere and described it as a planetary sphere of reason. According to the Chardin, the noosphere arises and forms as a result of the interaction of human minds. As humanity organizes itself into more complex social networks, the noosphere will become increasingly conscious. This concept expands T.E.R's law of complexity consciousness, which describes the nature of evolution in the universe. T.E.R. argued that the noosphere strives for even greater integration and unification, culminating in the omega point, the peak of the throat consciousness, which he considered the goal of history. All of this roughly resembles what the sea consciousness was trying to achieve. Such serious references to scientific and philosophical thoughts suggest that the problem isn't with the idea of the plot or what it's about. We are told about a catastrophe that occurred in humanity's aspiration to play God. This is the hidden meaning of the storyline. The problem lies in the fragmented narrative and the development of the game's main character. Besides the two main endings, There are 5 others. We can reach the monolith and make one of 5 wishes, which depend on our playstyle. In all these endings, STRELOK dies because he is exposed to powerful psi radiation and regular radiation. We spend many hours overcoming the zone's dangers and uncovering its secrets. We expect the story's culmination to bring satisfaction, a sense of completion and perhaps catharsis. The ending with the main character's death deprives us of this feeling. Firstly, because he is not developed as a personality, and secondly, because the STRELOK's death is not the result of our active actions or choices. It's a random occurrence superimposed on the attempt to make a wish. If we skip the meeting with the doctor, the hero doesn't learn that the monolith is an illusion. Using the wish granter as a key element in the ending introduces an element of sudden and inappropriated intervention by external forces not properly introduced into the plot earlier, which weakens the tension and drama. We don't feel like we influence the outcome of events. However, these endings emphasize the immense power and unpredictability of the zone. Even someone who reached its center is powerless before it. In this ending, the zone is certainly not defeated, and STRELOK becomes just another victim. These endings also correspond to the general atmosphere of hopelessness and tragedy that permeates the entire game. They are strange but believable endings within the context of the cruel and dangerous world of S.T.A.L.K.E.R. Evaluating S.T.A.L.K.E.R Shadow of Chernobyl is quite complex. In some places the game doesn't hold up to any criticism, while in others it stands out positively among other games. In my opinion, Shadow of Chernobyl should be approached differently. It's not just a game, but a performance. It sets the player not only the task of completing the story, but also of living through a certain experience. That's why it should be treated as an interactive work of art, and its obvious flaws should be perceived as integral to the overall experience. The fragmented narrative and sometimes imperfect gameplay in this context are not flaws, but stylistic choices that emphasize the chaos and uncertainty of the zone of alienation. They add realism and believability, creating a sense of unpredictability and constant danger. It's as if the screenwriter deliberately left gaps for the player to fill their own impressions and interpretations. The game doesn't strive for perfection, but for impacting the player on an emotional level. Therefore, it should be judged not by the standards of perfect games, but by how successfully it creates the intended atmosphere and conveys its artistic intent. Imagine an old, abandoned cinema projecting an unknown but wildly intriguing film with damaged film. The image might twitch, the sound might cut out, but the overall atmosphere and emotional impact remain intact. Some scenes might be unclear, but this adds to the mystery and makes the viewer think more about what's happening. S.T.A.L.K.E.R is similar. Despite its technical imperfections, the game creates a captivating atmosphere and deep immersion, making the player alive in this world and accept it with all its flaws. But if you're not ready for such unusual adventures as a trip to an abandoned cinema and want to enjoy a finished product, then of course the game is quite dated in some places. However, it has fully retained its strength even after 17 years. In these aspects, the game was definitely ahead of its time. I don't have a definitive opinion about this game, but I hope my story was interesting and helpful. However, it's only just beginning. Ahead are Clear Sky, fuck it, Call of Pripyat, whose melancholy makes you sleepy, and S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, which I didn't understand at all, but I liked it and I want to replay it to figure everything out. Thanks for watching, see you in the next videos, good luck!